If you go to the Intel Museum in Santa Clara, you can go back to the founding of Intel, and when we started getting into compute, the smart people that were first doing it, they realized if we only focus on the compute aspect, we'll never be successful. And so that's why you see the history of like throwing into Ethernet, fixing some of the memory bandwidth stuff. When I first started at Intel, I was part of the team that like brought SSDs to fruition. And you know, that's investment that a lot of companies go, why are you doing that? Like that's kind of backwards.
In here, this is a dual socket 128 core system, two 128 core CPUs from Intel, the fastest and best CPUs that Intel has ever done in 10 years. This is the first cornerstone on the road, on the journey to engineering greatness from Intel. The new generation CPUs, it's exactly the right way that Intel needs to think about everything. I've got the full benchmarks and the performance and everything else, but these CPUs are incredible. 500 watts per socket, 128 performance cores. They are something else. So Xeon 6 really is a big deal for Intel. And CPUs is a huge market, billions of dollars, don't get me wrong. But in the grand scheme of where the computation is happening, it's basically just a rounding error when we're talking about desktop CPUs. Server CPUs, and really in a general context, business compute is where the money actually is. And that is where Intel cannot afford any missteps. All right, I want to show you this really awesome platform. This is the dual 128 core system. It's 500 watts per CPU, but there's a lot more going on here than it really looks like. This is Intel's older Sapphire Rapids platform, and this is part of my liquid PCIe fabric. We've also got the 6700 series Xeon platform down here. So the 6700 series is about density and not the highest cost platform. It's 8 memory channels per socket. The 6700 Xeons I did a video on previously, but this is the 6900 series. 12 memory channels, all the PCIe bandwidth and all the performance. In my liquid PCIe fabric, I've added the MI210. Well, actually 5 of them. There's 5 MI210s in this box, and in this box has PCIe connections to all of these systems. And with Liquid's PCIe fabric in software, I can say, hey, these PCIe devices, they all map to this chassis, or they all map to this chassis, or I can split them up among these chassis. But that's part of what I ran my benchmarks on. So at the Intel Xeon 6 and Gaudi 3 launch, I was able to sit down with Intel's Ryan Tabrah so that he could explain the Intel roadmap.
Hi, Mom. Yeah.
But yeah.
I got my hi, Mom in, so just in case you use it. If you put that on there, then you'll get a lot more hits on your website.
Because this is a totally new philosophy from Intel. This is a more rapid pace of iteration. They've gone to tiles for compute, mainstream processors, and everything. And what are his thoughts on this?
It's really just market consumption. Our customers ready because we don't really like paper launches. We like to have, as you saw today, real customers already buying, using, ramping with our products. Because that's our internal goal. We can have our own internal milestones, but it's really our customers' milestones that really matter to our execution. In the differentiation of Granite, like we focused on, hey, it's great to put here's Granite, here's awesome P cores. You put these monster engines in here, but if you can't feed them, they lose their value. And I think that if you look at some of our competitor systems, they tout these higher core counts, they tout these larger instantiations. But like, I actually know what the customers are buying and they're actually using in real big installations, and they're not using the full thing. So I actually counter that the cores don't matter. It's actually the cores plus everything around that totally matters. Right?
It's the ecosystem.
And I think that's what, as we work with companies like Dell with our AI data centers, they are really excited. And I think you even heard in that last talk, Intel getting in like seriously into this game already gets the ecosystem a little pumped up because like, oh, okay, there's an adult in the room. And like, yeah, it's a little bit of like the geeky way to do it, but like they're going to make it so that we can all we can all make solutions together to drive the innovation the industry really needs versus just one company making all the money. That's really what we're targeting.
Now, the really amazing thing about what Intel's strategy is here is that they plan to let you mix P-cores and E-cores on platforms, but not in a socket. So if you wanted obscene density, you can get planned E-core based CPUs for this 12 memory channel socket. The 6700 platform socket is an 8 memory channel platform, and the 6900 series is a 12 memory channel platform. But P-cores and E-cores are available for both platforms. For our other platform, our 6700, check out our other benchmarks and everything that we did in the past. But the 6700 series in this configuration is about density. This is all E-cores, 144 cores per socket, but this thing's only 250 watts per socket as it's configured now. There are CPUs available for that socket that go up to, 300 watts, and you can have more power that you dump into it. But 250 watts as configured for density, which is great for, hyperscalers, and you just need a couple VMs for small things, microservices. But if you need performance, then you need all the instruction sets, and more importantly, you want to run AI. The 6900 series P-cores are the most incredible product Intel has ever done in 10 years.
I actually think that confidential computing is a critical foundation of where we are today with compute, but it's also one of the things we want to make it even easier for the AI data centers of the future to embrace. I actually think there was a great question outside of our CPU portion when they were talking about Gaudi and some of the security features. I think the industry customers are waiting for Intel to get into the game to be part of that and to drive that because we did it so well in other areas. And I think it's necessary for us to take AI data centers to the next level as we all get our own data ingested, as we have confidential LLMs, or as we all create our own AI bots around the world. How do you make sure that that's not just a gaping security hole?
So yeah, what Ryan was saying, that most of the customers are not necessarily looking for these 128 core monsters, but they are looking for a lot of performance, and the whole ecosystem has to perform well. Not just the CPU stuff, but being able to use the CPU to shuffle data around into other types of accelerators. That matters. That counts for a lot in Intel customers. But more importantly, getting that right with Xeon actually does pave the way for Intel to do something innovative in AI and basically every other space that they want to innovate in. That's why Xeon 6 is so critically important to Intel. Not just this one CPU launch, but also these platforms and the capabilities here to iterate on this platform and launch new CPUs with less qualification overhead and a rapid iteration cadence. And so the reason I wanted to talk about the MI210s is because they're mysteriously 8% faster. I didn't think this was real, but Intel actually included this in their slide deck, and it's even something I've seen from AMD. So originally those MI210s were composed into a ROM-based host, and just running the same Danny DeVito benchmarks, when they're composed into the 6900, they're 8% faster. And this has to do with just loading and PCIe bus stuff, and just the platform is physically faster with its DDR5 memory. I couldn't believe that, so I wanted to call that out specifically. Like, it doesn't matter even if you're in a mixed platform, if you're doing AI, everything, this is incredible. The other thing that Intel is hoping that people utilize is that these P-core Xeons have a lot of instructions and everything else for AI and for acceleration. It's OpenVINO and one API on the CPU side, but they're really doing a lot of work to make sure that dovetails with Habana and Gaudi. So you can do all of your work here. I recently went to Supermicro to experiment with their Gaudi systems, and some of the Python code that I developed on Habana on this platform, which doesn't have Gaudi GPUs, was basically drop-in ready for those Supermicro systems. It's a really interesting product strategy from Intel to sort of say, hey, yeah, you can use anybody's CPU with our Gaudi GPUs, but it works a little better on the P-core Xeons, and I get it. Intel Xeon 6, both the P-cores and the E-cores, in their benchmarks, are showing that they are a formidable, viable product. Intel Xeon 6, the 6900P series, 128 cores, the CPUs that I tested, Literally the best Xeon CPUs from Intel in 10 years or more. This is the most generational uplift that we're going to see probably for 2 or 3 generations. At the same time, Intel cannot slow down now. They need another generational uplift even beyond this to stay competitive. If you look at what's going on with the 6900P against the best CPUs from AMD, Genoa and Bergamo generations, this part is highly competitive. It pulls ahead. And then Intel also has their accelerators and their special sauce and everything else that goes with that. And so for Intel specific workloads, yes, Intel pulls far ahead, but Intel also pulls ahead by a pretty good margin for everything else. So a year ago, it's unquestionable Intel domination. But these CPUs didn't come out a year ago. They came out a couple of weeks before AMD's new Turin CPUs. And the Turin CPUs give Intel a run for its money in terms of performance for some of the benchmarks, but not all. It is pretty interesting when you look at how the workloads break down. Check out this article on Phoronix, check out our own benchmarks, and see how your workload is going to break down between the two families of CPU. But more important than the core, as we heard, is the entire rest of the ecosystem, and that is the most impressive thing to me. Intel is doing what it needs to do in terms of processor engineering. If they follow this path of iteration and improvement and everything else on this road, they are going to get there. It is going to be the most amazing time in servers that there has ever been, and that there will be probably for a long time. But in the larger ecosystem of GPU Connect and Gaudi 3 and the AI strategy, that is where the money is. And this is a critical component. It enables everything else, but it's really not where most of the profit margin is. Intel has to get this part absolutely correct in order to unlock everything else, and in order to unlock everything else in the best possible way. We see that with One API and OpenVINO. Like, you get that going on your Xeon 6 CPU, and then what you've learned there can translate into the Gaudi 3 ecosystem if you're going to use Intel's AI accelerators. But if you look at what Intel was doing in the past, you might say that they were hyper-focused on what's going on in the core and acceleration and everything else. Whereas now with Xeon 6, Intel has changed priorities. They are focusing on the cohesive ecosystem as a whole. It's not just the cores, it's also compute, but also storage. Yeah, Intel VROC kind of roaring back to life with some possibilities for improved performance. Now direct integration with VMware, new VMware products on the roadmap that I hope I'll be able to talk about really, really soon. So you get that on CPU acceleration better than an add-in card, but with all the same features of an add-in card, but it's enabled on the platform. Same for networking, same for everything else. And Xeon 6 is the first critical component in that roadmap to enable everything else. And Xeon 6 in its own right is a very, very impressive product. And you want to see how this Xeon 6 CPU translates into real world gains, even over Xeon 5 in AI products. I recently went to Supermicro to take a look at Gaudi 3 and how customers are using that. But also Gaudi 2, like Gaudi 2 is still a thing that you can buy that's very affordable, but Gaudi 3 is, the H100 comparable. And it's also got the goods. Intel has put it together. So that's very impressive. Check out that video. And the story for Xeon 6 is not over. There are new products coming based around both the P cores and E cores for both the 6700 series platform and the 6900 series platform. So there are more Xeon products coming for these cores, but if you wanted, 72, 96, 128 cores in a 12 memory channel platform, that's available now, and those products are shipping. They're shipping to Halo and enterprise customers and everybody that is buying 1,000 systems at a time, and they have the goods in terms of performance. So it's very, very impressive. If you have a particular benchmark that you would like me to run, or something interesting that you're working on, or you're doing computational fluid dynamics, let's connect. I'm going to go hang out on the forum. I'm Wunderlist Level 1. I'm signing out, and you can find me in the Level 1 forums. But let's run some jobs on this and see how it goes. All right, I'm signing out, and I'll see you later.